All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to this edition of NAP News Now. My name is Alisa Tag, and I am the Association Director with the National Association of Activity Professionals. And I'm super excited to welcome our guest today is Namrata Bagaria from the University of Ottawa, but she's also representing a new program called Senior Junction. And so we're going to learn a little bit more about that today. How are you, Nam?
I'm doing very well, thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Oh, we're so excited to have you on board. I have loved the series that you and Dr. Merkley have been doing for NAP on
Thank
our
you.
webinar series
Yeah.
about the power of music. And I love the fact that you've been focusing on so many different genres of music, not just, music in general. And so I want to thank you for joining us today
Thank you.
and tell us a little bit more about yourself and give us just a little brief introduction about your expertise, your background, and I know that you've done a lot of research on recreational prescriptions and looking at the role of social isolation, which is a huge topic of
Mhm.
conversation all across the world. So please share just a little bit more about that with us.
Sure. So you can call me Nam, and I come from Mumbai, India. I moved to Canada maybe 6, 7 years ago. So my tryst with North America started when I went to the US for my master's, which was in 2009. I'm a doctor, medical doctor from India, a master of public health from Harvard University, and I'm finishing my PhD in digital transformation and innovation at U Ottawa. And some of you may know me from Seniors Junction, which is a startup which I started with my colleague Dr. Paul Merkley. So essentially, my career has been since the beginning. My first job was making an app for pregnancy and parenting. So I started my career in 2010, I would say, and that time it was only GPRS, and then 3G came in, and 4G.
Mhm.
So I've worked across in telemedicine and digital apps in many countries. I've even been to Afghanistan for a project. So basically, I'm someone who's really keen on using technologies for social good, and that's my entire career. And today I would be mostly talking about um, the Recreation Prescriptions Project, which is my thesis, which has a little bit connection with Seniors Junction, but not too much.
That's okay. I think
Yeah.
it's super cool that you have dedicated your life to technology and utilizing that for the greater good. And, sometimes technology can get such a bad rap, and we were
Mhm.
talking about that before we went live, about how technology has changed so much in our world today
Yeah.
and being able to know how to use it right
Yeah.
is amazing. And so thank you so much for doing what you're doing. And I know that social isolation, as I said, it's a huge problem. Let's just define it right away, right the way it is, right? And I know that even in the United States, the MDS that we do utilize for skilled nursing has some changes that are coming October 1 that talk specifically about social isolation, and it's been a growing concern. We didn't
Mhm.
realize how bad it was until the pandemic, right? And I think
Mhm.
that's huge to think about with the pandemic. So think about that too, and the impact of socialization or social isolation on individuals, and why do you believe that recreation can be an effective solution to mitigate it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think so. Let's just define quickly because as an academic, it's always good to start defining things first. So when I say social isolation, I mean objective lack of connections or objectively not meeting a person, which is different from loneliness, which is subjective lack of quality of your relationships. So you can be with 5 people and still be lonely. You can be lonely in a crowd. But so my focus in my research is how do you get someone from being on their own to come out and start talking to people or interacting with people. The reason I found recreation a very interesting prospect because I think there are many personality types which can be catered to. So, for example, someone who generally doesn't like people. There are many people who don't like people. Many people who have social anxiety or they have some kind of a trauma in the past, betrayal, or someone passed away, and whatever reason. So for me, doing an intervention which was very touchy feely would be very difficult because maybe someone's not ready for intimacy, and that's different.
Mm,
So with recreation, firstly, there's plenty evidence. The way I stumbled upon social isolation was initially my thesis was on physical activity for older adults. And I changed the thesis topic after I found the number one reason to do physical activity is actually not to be socially isolated. So I was surprised that fitness was not the goal, weight loss was not the goal, diabetes got nothing. It was social isolation. So when I discovered that, and there were some other reasons I had to change my topic, so I found that. And then over time, there's a lot of literature which shows that sometimes all you need is a stimulation. For example, if you've had someone who's been in their room, like a shut-in in an independent living or senior living residence, you cannot suddenly put them in activities, but you can definitely ask them to get out and sit in the bench in the park or get some sunshine. And so for me, recreation had that kind of an opportunity where you could really calibrate how many people you want to get expose that person to, how often. There's also a sense of rhythm. There's also a sense of maybe purpose. Maybe they don't start with going for the sake of the people, they start going for the activity, and then eventually you start doing it for the sake of the people that they're there. So it offered a more a flexible approach to solving it, because it's also softer than attacking people's personalities or issues. And again, I wanted to do something which could be tech enabled, and recreation can be done very well because technologies for recreation exist since a while now. Yeah.
I love the definitions you just gave, because I think that's the challenge right there. What you talked about is that what social isolation is, and then what it is to be alone or to be lonely. And I think a lot of times we kind of clump those two together.
Yeah.
You made a valid point about the fact when somebody's admitted to our communities, they may not want to be a joiner just yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
They have to get their feel for things. And I think that's how we are in life anyway, is that
Exactly. All of us are
just
like
takes
that.
time, to introduce ourselves. Nobody's comfortable. Even activity professionals are not
Yeah.
comfortable just walking into a room and saying, "Hey, I'm here, let's
Yeah.
go," kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
that's super cool what you mentioned about that. And I know with your research, you've been doing a lot of research on this about focusing on decisions supporting that recreation prescription. So could you share some of the innovative approaches or technologies that you've been exploring to enhance the effectiveness of that recreation based interventions that are helping to combat social isolation?
Yeah, sure. So at the moment, if you go in the literature, most of the work is around effectiveness, which is gardening effective, is walking effective, is going bowling effective, learning language. So when you look at the literature, there are like thousands of activities. And essentially what the researchers have done is, okay, so 100 people tried this is what we got. Then somebody did a meta-analysis and probably can say, okay, physical activities are stronger evidence because there are more studies done. But what's missing from the literature is why was somebody doing this activity and why not that activity? And that kind of decision support, because if you think of social prescribing as a movement, where I'm telling you, okay, now instead of medication, I'm going to give you something like an exercise or food or whatever. Let's say I would say recreation, because that's very strongly correlated with social isolation, prevention, and reduction. How does the social prescriber make a decision? Right now, the only way they're doing it is by, if they have 5 prescriptions with them, which means if nature, some national parks have given them something, some museums have given them a pass. And that's also, they're prescribing what's available. They're not prescribing what people want. And there's a difference between the two approaches. So my suggestion is, yes, availability of course matters. If I tell you to go for a walk in a jungle and you live in Mumbai, of course you can't do that. But you can probably go to the park or go below your apartment complex, whatever. So I would say that, and also then what happens is, as you age, sometimes you may have certain physical, psychological, or cognitive challenges that start showing up. So the same thing, for example, if you are a person who liked to play tennis, you cannot continue playing tennis because let's say you had a knee surgery. Then what can you do? Maybe you can do pickleball. So how do you decide the alternative? So for me, the inspiration was around, let's say, food pyramids and food choices. So let's say if you want to eat 100 calories, you could eat a bread, or you could eat, let's say, 2 egg whites. Roughly, I'm not right on that. So what if we did the same thing with socialization? So what if I said, okay, you could meet a friend, or you could do this and that. And then that ways you create a sort of a system where people can enter, choose options they want, because depending on what kind of a good day or a bad day they are having, or depending on what their needs are, they can get solutions. And for me, the technologies which I was looking for, honestly, I was looking for the most simple ones, because from the digital divide perspective, most senior living, most senior centers, most hospitals are not the most digitally savvy. So I wanted something which works easily on a website, like a website which has a calculator. And eventually, after my thesis is over, maybe some other computer science students can work on it and make it into a machine learning thing. But it's not necessary to have that first. I think right now my job is to translate the domain knowledge from recreation into a model for computer science. So it's an interdisciplinary research. And eventually, they can put all the fancy things, make apps, because even if you make it, nobody's going to use it where people are right now. But I
Right.
guess the next generation of and this can then, if you want to make it into an AI app which connects all the different activities, you can do it for the younger people because they're lonelier and more isolated than the older ones, right?
Mm. Oh, goodness, Nam, you just gave us a whole bunch of amazing information that I'm still trying to like soak it in, because you've made such valid points. I love what you said, because I know that there was research, or there was in earlier in the year in the country of Canada, that doctors were starting to prescribe national park passes in Canada
Yes, yes.
as recreation prescription. And I thought that was really interesting, but you made such a great point about the fact that maybe that's something that they don't want to do. You know, you're
Like
giving.
if you give it to me, I'll never go. Sorry, I hate it. I like nature, but I rather go to a museum or an art show or
Absolutely.
meet someone for coffee. I'm more social and cultural.
I
And it's
love
a
that.
punishment to go to because I'm scared of driving on a highway.
Okay.
And so for me, that doesn't work. You know?
Yeah, that would be problematic, because you can't, most national parks you have to drive on a highway to get to.
Yeah.
That's a great point. And I think that's really cool, because I know in our country they talk about a lot with non-pharmacological approaches to
Yeah.
care, which is just the same as social
Yeah.
recreation prescription. But I love the fact that, like, with non-pharmacological approaches to care, it's referring to, what will the resident desire to do? And you hit that money on the head too there, with the fact that it's all about choice. It's giving options, it's giving choices, so that people still feel like they're in control of their
Yeah.
life. And I think that is huge. I talk about my mom a lot. She may be watching. Hi, mom. She just turned 87, still lives alone, still can drive her car, still very active, and I have a few siblings, hi siblings, if they're watching, that sometimes worry about mom, being on her
Yeah.
own at 87. And I just had her over for dinner for her birthday a couple weeks ago, and she got up and did stretches. She was able to
Yeah.
reach over her head. She was still able to touch her toes. She did all these amazing things, and she said to me, listen, when I know how my body is, and when I know that I'm done
Yeah.
living alone, you will be the first to know. And I
Yeah.
really appreciated that, because it's all about her choice and her
Exactly.
decisions, right? And I think
Yes.
that's cool that you're researching that more, so that it can help us better understand that. And I love the fact that you're collaborating, between other organizations. And, that's such a vital part of that whole process of research, is collaboration. And it's very essential to address those complex societal issues that we're always dealing with,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
how can organizations like us, like NAAP, how
Yeah.
can we help with researchers in academia to implement more evidence-based strategies for promoting recreation as a means to reduce social isolation?
I think in US, the word is social determinants of health,
Ooh,
right? So it's called SDOH. I think that's the hot topic. And even Kaiser Permanente has started reimbursing for it now.
okay.
So it's your insurance companies have started reimbursing under Medicare Advantage D or C. I'm sorry. One is for pharmaceuticals and one is for all these things.
Mhm.
So I apologize. I'm not on the
That
dot.
would be C. It's C. Mhm.
C, yes. So C, wellness plans. So now this is included, not like generally speaking, it's included, wellness plans are included. And because the couple of things. So what you talked about your mother coming back to and what NAP can help, that perspective is called connected autonomy, where you're connected and autonomous because it's really not separate, right? You cannot all the time be connected and have no personal choices and vice versa. So I think that's the language we use at University of Ottawa. There was a recent textbook which came out on this topic, connected autonomy. But within social determinants of health, NAP and organizations like NAP really know what people are doing. Researchers, we sit in our research office, or which is mostly home nowadays for most of us, but I try to, because my background was in public health, I really believe in field work and getting out there. So definitely a lot of my research is getting, once ethics approvals are getting done in a senior living. And again, now we have in Canada with fall, the respiratory outbreak season. So again, a lot of protocols and issues with those. But I think what NAAP can do is contextualize it for us, because I think as researchers, what makes you accepted is rigor and generalizability. But what makes it accepted with people is relatability and
Mhm.
personalization. Because you cannot tell someone, research says you should go for a walk and that person is on a wheelchair. It makes no sense at all.
Mm.
So I think we are in an ecosystem of interdependence. I myself have learned so much from NAP and benefited from knowing your work, participating, or even just listening. So I think there is merit to having strong organizations who are very open to collaboration. So I'm just very grateful to present this here today.
Well, thank you. I love that. And we have really been thrilled that we've been able to find one another and to be able to
Yeah,
continue to collaborate together
definitely.
on this journey, and just a little bit more about how we can be better as professionals working with these seniors that are living in our communities. They're coming into a community life. They need to have the support that we can give them,
Yeah,
and be that advocate for them, be their voice when maybe they
yeah,
can't voice for themselves anymore.
yeah,
And that's
yeah.
super, super exciting, super
Thank
exciting.
you. Thank
Well,
you.
looking ahead, what do you see as the future of recreation prescriptions in the context of social isolation? So are there any specific programs or initiatives that you're excited about in this field?
So I think there is a big difference when I see what's within academic literature and what's happening otherwise, right?
Yeah.
So I can go either which ways. So let's say in academia, you're seeing a much more interdisciplinary work, which is exciting. You're seeing a lot of virtual options or combination of technologies, which means it's not the traditional gardening anymore. You're combining it with some kind of a either recommenders or schedulers or calendars, something. So which is exciting to finally see a lot of tech coming out in research.
Mm-hmm.
From a practical standpoint, I see which is very surprising. There's a lot of demand for virtual reality in the sense of, tours, like going, like if all of them can go to, I don't know, without actually traveling to some place, those kind of things are coming up. What the issue lies there with as much of more tech can come out. The truth is most senior living in community centers do not have strong Wi-Fi or devices to use it. So I think until that becomes a strategic investment rather than an expense perspective for the people who run it, because the future seniors who come are not going to be seniors who are not digitally native. These are people who've worked and retired using at least Microsoft Word and those kind of things. So they have their own Netflix and they have their own Amazon. And so these are people who are maybe not as much as millennials, but lesser, but they still have. So if you're going to put them in rooms where internet doesn't work, or because the walls are made in such a way that it doesn't work, it's going to be difficult. And also the cost, I think one of the short-sightedness is that it's a care industry, but we are trying to replace people or short staff it, so if you're going to do all that, you definitely need technology to assist you, even if you want, let's say, to get a scheduler assistant, or you want to use chat gpt like we were talking, or social robots that exist which you can use. But even then, those are assistants, because I don't think technology will mature, at least for the next 50 years, in such a way for human centric work that they can replace humans. It can be a good assistant.
Right.
So I would say that we need to find ways to remove physical infrastructure barriers and reduce the anxiety of people to know that they're not being replaced by machines, but they're being augmented with things because of short staffing or whatever else. Yeah.
Mm. Those are two big things. I think I was just reading an article, Trader Joe's. I love Trader Joe's. I
Yeah.
don't, and they're the one of the few grocery stores that said they're not going to use self-checkout, that they're going to be one of the grocery stores that's going to stay with that. And then I read about these stores in like the UK and in New Zealand that have slow lanes on self-checkout for those
Yeah.
older people that want to go through the slow lane and have a conversation with the checker,
Yes.
like what they're familiar with. And
Yes.
I love what you said about the fact that it's not necessarily AI and technology is not to replace human nature and in human connection, because we still need to have that connection. But I think, as you said, as our society comes into the aging spectrum,
Yeah.
you're right. I mean, I think about how many things I stream on a daily basis, and if I have good internet, I know, I think there was a day, it was like 2 days, maybe 6 months ago, we had no internet for 2 days, and you think we were done, it was over. We had nothing we couldn't do anything. We couldn't watch TV. We couldn't get on the computer. We had to use our own.
Well, that's why you need recreation for those moments. That's why I chose. There's another philosophical reason to choose, by the way, recreation. I'm going back to the first question now that I think of it.
Yeah.
I deeply thought of a world where we are in like insanely addicted to tech, which is already there. And then the only way out is when you go play a tennis or go for a walk, and you actually have to connect. Because if you meet your friend for coffee, nowadays the people hang out as you take your phone and text each other while you're sitting in front of each other. It's stupid. So, so this is the answer. The 2 days next time Las Vegas doesn't have internet, you go play tennis, go for a walk, or you go to Grand Canyon.
That's right. Or go to the Grand Canyon. And I think if it wasn't 110 degrees outside, we would have done those things. But but you're right. That's the thing, is that we're so connected to our phones that we've lost connectivity to nature, to recreation.
Yeah, it's partly our fault. It's the same argument with food, right? We worked hard enough to get cheap calories so that we don't have people dying of starvation. And now we have people dying of obesity. So we don't know how to use the resources we have as a society and then as individuals. And essentially what the phone is doing is replacing your connection. So this can be a solution for a connection or the driver of disconnection. It's a choice how you use it, right?
Yes, that's a great thought. Solution of connection or
driver of disconnection.
Driver of disconnection. I love that quote. I'm going to quote you, Nam, on that, because I think that is so.
I just made it up right now, so it's great. Quote me and just send it back so that I remember it.
What was a solution, and then what was the second word?
It was a solution for connection or a driver for disconnection.
Driver for disconnection. That was the one I love that. I'm writing it down so I don't forget it. That is a good one. And that is so true, that how we choose to spend our days, how we choose to spend is really how we're going to spend our days for the rest of our lives. It's not going to change just because we get old and we retire. We're not going to change the things that we do. We need to create opportunities for engagement now that are going to be helpful to in our elderly phases of life, and as we become, members or citizens of a community like a nursing home or assisted living or independent living, even, that we're going to be able to still have options and choices that we can do that are going to keep us connected and not isolated from everything else. I love that.
Yes.
What a great conversation. Thank you so much for your time today. I know you're super busy as you're working on your thesis and your dissertation and doing everything that you're doing. I'm amazed with the talent that you already have in you, Nam, and I'm so appreciative to have you as a friend of the activity professional community, and we so appreciate everything that you do for us. And thank you. I always like to end with final words of wisdom, and maybe that was your solution, connection, driver of disconnection, but what do you have anything else you want to share with us before we end?
I think from my data shows that, I'm reviewing some podcasts that we had done to create the software. So technology definitely comes out as a driver of connection right now. But I think I would encourage all of you to shut your computers for some time and have 5 minutes to yourself. What I realized, and this is my personal realization, so maybe you can benefit from my misery. There are two things I don't do well. One is I don't switch off totally. So one of the new solutions I'm going to try is a bath, because in Canada, let's say we don't have a water shortage. So once in a while, bath, responsible water use. But let's say most of us don't know how to de-stress, and then we end up eating. And that's the fuel of obesity for many of us. And the other thing most of us don't know is how to get in the zone of flow for productivity.
Yeah.
And then we are browsing internet or whatever, wasting time in doing that. So I think if we do some kind of a recreation there, like maybe a 10-minute walk or a fast Zumba song and just do something, because what we want seniors to do, we have to also, represent it ourselves.
Right.
I myself go to, like, I do 4 times workout in a week, and I go out. I go out of my house to do it, like to a recreation center, and it's made a huge difference in my life. I've been doing it for 5 years. So yeah, I would say find your mojo, and you definitely need to be tech savvy, but you also need to be recreation savvy, because we need both today, you know. So
Beautiful final words of wisdom. Thank you so much for your time again. And
my
just for
pleasure.
everybody that's been watching, we will be back here next week. We have two special guests, or no, just one special guest next week, but we'll be back here on Tuesday. We hope to see you. Join us again. And again, thank you. We so appreciate you. Thank you so
My
much all
pleasure.
of
Thank
you
you.
for the activity field in general. We appreciate recreation, engagement, socialization. All of these things are the buzzwords that we need to be knowing and
Yes.
understanding, and even for ourselves. So thank you for
Yes.
those thoughts at the end.
Thank
All right, everybody stay safe and stay sane, and we'll see you back here next week.